Your number one hype gal here, and welcome to the Weekly Warmup, your weekly dose to feel a little more confident and a lot more human. I'm Jess McDowell, and each week I'll share life updates, mindset shifts, product faves, the little things that help me stay grounded, energized, and moving and grooving. Whether you're heading out for a jog, sipping your morning coffee, or just need a midweek pick-me-up, this is your warm-up for living a real balanced life. So take a breath, shake it out, and let's dive in. Welcome back to the Weekly Warmup podcast. Hello. We are officially on episode 30. 30 episodes of the Weekly Warmup. I am proud of myself for continuing on with this project, regardless of, any type of circumstance. I love that I started this not when I feel like I have fully made it, but that as I am growing and making it at the same time, because this podcast is growing with me, it's growing with us, and I get to bring it with me along the way. We haven't had 30 weeks consecutively in the row just because of Christmas and New Year. But for 30 weeks total, I have got on and brought y'all some really great content, I have to admit. I love all the guests that I've had on. They have been so informative, beneficial. Each one of them is completely different in their own talents, in their own careers, in their own ways. And I've really also loved doing solo episodes with you lately because sometimes you just need the one-on-one, and I don't always want it to be about other people talking and just setting myself aside. Sometimes I feel like, to me, I'm cheating, even though having guests on is really fun and amazing. And that's also part of a podcast. I don't want to look like I'm just bringing people on to do the work for me. So we will be having guests, I promise. But right now I've just been really loving the whole solo episodes and bringing the people what they deserve and what they want. So thanks for coming along with me on this. Thanks for putting up with me for 30 weeks. That's a lot of commitment to put up with me for that long. So I appreciate y'all. And let's dive in. So last time we spoke, I believe, I had or was doing the back-to-back races. So last weekend, Saturday, Sunday, I had the Celsius 5K, and then I had the Publix A1A half marathon. Ended up being such a solid race weekend. I podiumed both races, which was not expected, but I'm very proud of myself for pushing, and it's showing that the training and what I've been doing is working, though I still have a lot of work to do, and I have a lot more goals that I want to achieve. I'm proud of myself. For the Celsius 5K, I got second woman overall and first in my age group, so that evened out, which I was thankful for the second overall. And then for the half marathon, I got third place in my age group, which was really great as well. I was aiming for the 130, 133. That is not a PR. PR for me would be in the 128 range, but the last 3 miles kicked everybody's ass. The wind, first of all, A1A, so you're running on A1A, you're literally feet from sand. It's not just, trees and walkway and then you go onto the beach. You are feet from sand. So of course you're getting that wind pickup from the ocean. At the same time, you're running down A1A. I felt like I was running through a brick wall. I was cruising. When you look at my splits, you'll see I was making it. I was doing the damn thing. And then those last 3 miles, you can see where I just lost like 20 seconds each time. So ended up getting 136 instead of 133. Not the end of the world, guys. Not beating myself up. It's not like I'm trying to go to the Olympics or anything, but it's just one of those things where then you look at like, okay, now I need to do better resistance training. So if this happens again, I will push even harder, but it won't win me. I won't lose the time. I'm going to be using my TRX hex grip TRX hex grip weighted vest, the 10-pound weighted vest on speed days and track days, because that is how I'm going to build up that resistance. But speaking of, let's get going on our topics, because I always have some great beneficial topics to talk about that are centered around women and running and fueling and living life to the fullest. And not like the guys can't listen or watch, because y'all can learn some things. Definitely you can learn some things, and you can at least put some of these topics into perspective. Today, I want to talk about underfueling and why it's sabotaging women runners, just because a lot of women don't understand how to properly fuel for any portion of your training or post training or pre race, post race, any type of fueling in general. There's always a misconception, and then there's always things that are being thrown on the internet that we feel like we need to listen to. Then there's false information. So I really wanted to just break it down very simple. I don't want to word vomit. Sometimes I can do that. I just want to get to the point and give some of y'all a clear understanding and peace of mind. And before I start, yes, I am a sports nutritionist and I have been in this industry long enough to discuss this, but also we're not talking about intentional restriction. We're not talking about disordered eating, just chronically not eating enough to support your training load. And the problem is your endurance sports can mask it for a while, meaning you can go for a good period amount of time with underfueling yourself and you can perform, but eventually you will hit a plateau. Eventually you will hit rock bottom and it will start pushing you back and you will be fighting with it, which then ends up being counterintuitive, obviously, because what you're doing is you're underfueling, but you're pushing yourself to your limit thinking it's your training when really it's your underfueling. So when we talk about fueling or energy availability, we're wanting to talk about it in the concept of truly energy availability. And that is the amount of energy left over in your body for normal physiological functions after training. So after your training is done. And what we want to account for that is not just calories in, calories out. It's not always about calories. And again, that's just a common misconception about how we should fuel in general for any type of training. But we're talking about our hormone production, our bone health, our immune function, thyroid regulation, just plain old simple recovery. So when energy availability is consistently too low, your body then starts to prioritize survival over performance. And that's where you're going to start having major problems. I've gotten into that before. I've struggled with it before. As women, I think we also struggle because of the fact of sometimes how much we should be eating. And then obviously we get the kickback of what our body should look like, and then not being properly educated on fueling your body for training. So you feel like having some carbs here and there, some protein after you work out, having your balanced meals is enough for you. But then you're realizing when you're doing all your performing and not your performing, when you're training and you're, say, going to do races or whatever it may be, you're not getting the output that you're putting in with the training. And it's not your training, it's your fueling. Female athletes, we'll call all of ourselves female athletes. As female athletes, there's a clinical framework. It used to be called female athlete triad, I think. Yeah. But now it's called Relative Energy Deficiency in Sports, or REDS, RED-S. And low energy availability can impact menstrual function, where to the point you don't have it, or you are bleeding too much, or you're spotting too much, bone density, which is huge, metabolic rate, cardiovascular health. Typically, cardiovascular health is one that affects men more than women, immune function, and then mood and cognition. And lo and behold, for women runners, endurance athletes specifically, menstrual disruption is often one of the earliest signs. And losing your period is not a sign that you're fit. It's a sign that your body is conserving energy. That is why a lot of gymnasts, a lot of high level athletes will stop having regular periods. And I also want to say, for the day-to-day athlete or the elite but for the recreational athlete, you're not as likely to lose your period or not have your period. What will happen is your cycle may fluctuate and you might see changes to your period. But I'm just talking about as a full spectrum, if you want to call it that. So, though I always thought when I lost my period, growing up, I will say that too, when I played soccer, when I started to have my period, obviously when I was before that, whatever, but playing soccer, running, I did get a little excited when I didn't have to deal with my period because who wants to deal with their period? But then when you start to learn the physiology behind it and biology behind it and how it actually is slowing recovery between sessions, you have increased injury risk, higher cortisol levels, plateau with your aerobic development, even though you're this A+ athlete, you're not sleeping properly. Iron deficiency, I have a story to tell you about this, but so iron deficiency is very common in female endurance athletes, especially distance runners, which can impair oxygen transport and endurance capacity. And this is really funny. So I don't remember how old I was. Was I in high school or college? I was younger. And one day I woke up with a black tongue. It tasted literally like metal, like iron, and it was black. And it was because of an iron deficiency. And lo and behold, why was it for that? Or why was I having that? Because of what I was doing to my body when I was exercising, when I was training, and not having proper fuel utilization. So it will happen. Trust me. And I looked like a chow chow for a day. My mom didn't even know what to do. I think she called my aunt because my Aunt Kathy, that's her older sister, like she knows everything. I think she called her, and my aunt, I don't remember what my aunt said, but yeah. So I think they thought I was like a cow because cows can have black tongues. So naturally, when we are training and we have fatigue, we'll do our normal recovery of, okay, supplements, eating to what you need, to what you feel like you should be eating, sleeping, doing your usual routine. And you're noticing though that you still have this response to fatigue. So then you're like, you kind of think, well, do I need to train harder then? What's going on? If I'm not performing at the level that I am outputting, then I must not be doing something right. It's my problem. It's me. When you're not thinking, well, it kind of is you, but it's not your physical you, it's your internal you, your biological you, your physiological you. And that's the insufficient fuel. I will say that running has become more prominent, which is great. I love it. I love the run clubs popping up. I love seeing people want to become endurance athletes, want to sign up for races, are achieving goals and making these PRs that they never thought that they would ever achieve, coming together as community. There's so many aspects of it that are just truly living healthy. And it is a full blown lifestyle now, and it's great. And I think within the last 5 years, I would say that carbohydrates with endurance athletes, especially women, that misconception is kind of starting to go away. Whereas before we looked at carbs as if, as a woman especially, that's going to go straight to our hips. That's going to go straight to our thighs, our hips, our glutes. I mean, sometimes we want the glutes, but that we don't want that, and we fear that we need to do protein, 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 and not carbs. But for endurance performers, we are heavily dependent on glycogen availability. And glycogen is stored carbohydrates in the muscle and liver tissue. We talked a little bit about this last episode when we were kind of talking about glycolytic, which is a little bit different, but in the sense of, fats and carbs and how women with, us burning fat and needing fat more versus men with carbs, ironic. But, our perceived effort increases when we're intaking carbs properly. So when our glycogen stores are chronically low, glycogen, AKA sugar, AKA carbohydrates, well, glucose. But anyways, our perceived efforts increase, our pace stability decreases, our recovery becomes impaired. And then from studies, I've read that there's strong evidence about carbohydrate availability influences training adaptations. So if you're constantly running and depleted, you're not maximizing the stimulus of training, which I thought was pretty interesting when I was reading on that. So, moral of the story is carbs are your friends. Carbs are something you want to take seriously when training, but also how you're properly intaking carbs, prior to training, hours, 1 hour, 2 hours, 30 minutes during training, 1 hour, 2 hour post training. And that's something that I can break down with y'all or break down with you if you do mentoring with me. And we can look at what type of training you are doing and how you can implement carbs appropriately throughout your training schedules. So that's something that's super important. And let me say this, you can Google it, you can research it, You can chat GPT it or whatever you want, but having somebody that is actually educated and trained in it and has also lived it is much more beneficial to you than reading off of what the internet thinks you need to intake, because it's truly not seeing how you're burning energy and how your day to day is around your training. So you have to remember too that we're burning energy consistently all the time. We're not just burning energy when we're in motion, or we're always in motion, but we're not burning energy just when we're training. Just like how when we're trying to hydrate, me talking right now, the spit that I'm talking is dehydrating us. So you have to take and factor in your lifestyle as well. And the internet's not going to do that. So if you want, let's get together. Let's chat about this. Let me mentor you to get you eating right and fueled right and understanding the appropriate carbs. Before I continue on with this topic of fasted training, I will admit that I have done it. I do it, and I do like it at sometimes. It is not for beginners. It is not for intermediate. You have to understand as to why you're fasted or why you're training fasted and what outcome you are wanting to achieve through fasted training. Not that I'm not hungry or I don't want to eat. For me, when I have fasted training, trained and fasted, is to build up energy, stamina when I do eat, if that makes sense. So when I'm fasted training and I am running, say 6 miles, obviously your body is burning energy from your stored fats and carbs and is going into your proteins. But what I am doing is I'm building up my energy, fuel, stamina. So when I do heavy carb load and I do eat what I would normally eat when I'm training, it doesn't get burnt as quickly. You almost train to have better fuel efficiency, but it is very specific. I don't recommend it to everybody. And that's that. But moving on, fasted training, like I just talked about, can improve certain metabolic adaptions. But lo and behold, a lot of research has been done male dominant. Sure, because that makes most sense. But women have different, obviously, hormonal responses to energy deficit, particularly with menstrual cycle. Here we go. I'm shutting down. Let me have some electrolytes. And in women, if we're frequently fasting and high intensity or long duration sessions, it can increase our cortisol and disrupt hormonal imbalance, which is why context matters, frequency matters, and load matters, because we're not trying to spike our cortisol or disrupt our hormonal balance, because then what's going to happen? Our training is going to start to plummet. So to put all this into perspective of what I've been talking about, endurance training increases energy demand significantly. Significantly. Please always have that in your mind 24/7 when you are endurance training, AKA running. It is completely different than strength training, resistance training, Pilates, yoga, sculpt, HIIT, whatever it may be. Endurance training increases energy demand significantly. And repeat after me after this one. Fatigue, it's not because you're weak. It's not because you're not trying or you're not training enough. It means fueling is part of the training stimulus and you're not fueling your stimulus properly. And you got to get that under control before you can fly, before you can soar. And once you do, you will notice such a crazy difference in how your output is, your performance levels, your energy levels, your increase in your energy demand. It's astonishing. So if you're constantly tired or injured, which if you're constantly injured, like that could also be through other things as well, by the way. But if you feel tired and fatigued all the time, or you're feeling like you're plateauing and you can never get away from that plateau, you're moody, the sleep is not helping with recovery, it probably has to do with your fueling and not having to train harder or put more mileage on. Remember that, okay? Don't beat yourself up on that. Again, one of the biggest misconceptions for women endurance athletes is how to properly fuel the body. So again, if you want to learn your body and what you need, come to me. I got you. So I wanted to take a break from that. You know me, I always like to pull things up. But first, I wanted to just take a moment of silence. I saw yesterday or last night before I was going to bed that a runner passed away after a driver veered onto the course of the Florida Half Marathon in Melbourne, Florida, on February 8th. I'm not going to read the article. I don't want to go into politics. I don't want to go into pointing fingers or drama. I just want to give my thoughts and prayers to the victim's family, and I hope that everything goes right for however it needs to. But that's scary. It's sad. You don't hear that often. So, luckily, a lot of the races that I've been in, I've always felt very, very safe. I've always felt that the volunteers and the police officers and the amazing people that put on these events ensure safety is the first priority. So, again, just thoughts and prayers. I felt like that was appropriate. I wanted to go into, you know me, I find my little fun stuff on the web, on the IG. And this one is 5 ways to learn everyday life into brain training. Yeah. So I'm going to go through a couple of them because there's 5. So maybe I'll go through, let's see which ones I like the best. I want to do that one. That seems pretty cool. They're all pretty cool. But I'll also share this like I always do. So when this episode comes out, I'll share this in the story, this post. But 5 ways to turn everyday life into brain training. 1, talk with your hands. I love talking with my hands. I think it's really funny too because there are situations where people will scold you for talking with your hands, but in certain, I don't know, like politics or public speaking, things like that, you're not supposed to talk with your hands too much. But then there are certain situations where talking with your hands is appropriate. I guess I need to learn an etiquette lesson on when it is and when it isn't, but I don't mind talking with hands. I do think that that's a form of expression. But using gestures while speaking engages both the language centers, Broca area, and the motor regions of the brain. Primarily primary motor cortex, supplementary motor area. Okay, cool. I need to get a neuroscience major or a neurologist on here. Stat. Anyone knows one, let me know. I could probably just like reach out to the hospital and see if they would want to do somebody. Even if it was like they don't call them TA, but you know, one that's in training, that's in like boot camp, make them do it. What is it? Not clinicals, is it clinicals? Clinicals? I don't know. This cross activation strengthens connections between different types of brain processes, making thinking memory more robust. I could see that, talking with your hands and that making you remember maybe the conversation or what you were talking about. My hair keeps itching me. Number 2, walk backward safely. You had to put that in there. Walking backward requires greater cognitive effort to coordinate balance, movement, and spatial awareness, which activates the here we go. Cerebellum. I think I have Welker hair on me. Cerebellum, motor cortex, and prefrontal regions. It also strengthens the brain's proprioceptive body awareness network. 3, switch hands for simple tasks. Using your non-dominant hand challenges the contralateral hemisphere, opposite side of the brain, builds new neural pathways through neuroplasticity. It improves coordination, bilateral brain communication via the corpus callosum. Callosum. I like to do that though. I'll switch hands, even if I'm on phone, things like that. Writing, not so much. Exercise, absolutely. That is a big thing to be training too for like balance, but as well as like equilibrium and balancing out sides. Absolutely. 4, describe what you see in detail. Actively describing your surroundings activates both the visual cortex, seeing, and the language network, Broca's and Wernicke's area, promoting stronger multimodal integration. This dual processing makes perception richer and memory sharper. I can see that describing, yeah. Well, and they do that with a lot of different professions as well, too, but also in therapy. describing learn a song in a new language. Where was this before the Bad Bunny concert? Singing in a foreign language synchronizes auditory, linguistic, motor, and emotional centers. This whole brain workout strengthens memory, encoding, attention control, even improves mood, which itself enhances cognitive function. Cool. That was a nice little tidbit. I'll share it. Moving on. I had to stand up and stretch for a second. I did speed work today, so I was getting a little hyped. This is a fun topic. This is a fun educational topic because I don't like using words like this, strong girl era, but there is this rise, I will say, an epidemic in the most positive way of being a strong girl, and from clean girl to performance girl. I've been reading a lot about it. I don't want to say that any of those have died out. I think they've equally stayed in their own niche and present, but I cannot tell you how much I love witnessing women of all ages, of all shapes, of all sizes, of all ethnicities, of all cultures, just banding together to make themselves feel good through exercise, through health, wellness, and community. And I've just been thinking a lot about it lately. It's not going anywhere. Very specifically, running. I mean, when I first started running, it wasn't cool. It wasn't something that, if you talked about, people would be interested in. No one wanted to hear me talk about running. They'd be like, oh, cool, great. Anyways, moving on. You know what I mean? No one wanted to hear me talking about races I was doing or any type of endurance, anything. It was just that, oh, Jess, she is a freaking nutbag and is a running junkie. To see how it has now turned into this massive, massive billion-dollar industry, but also massive, massive community of people coming together to run and learn about the pros and cons. So that was my spiel. But let me get to what I'm actually supposed to talk about. Running is cool again. We love that. It's just, we're a hamster wheel. Life is a hamster wheel. It will stay here. And then who knows, in a 5 or whatever more years, something else is going to come back. Spinning is going to come back. Cycling is going to come back. You know what I mean? But right now, marathons are selling out. High rocks is everywhere. I haven't done high rocks. I don't know if I will or not. I'm not against it. I'm not for it. I just don't know, like, the weight of certain things that I would have to carry and the farmers carry stuff. Not that I'm not strong, but I've broken wrists and stuff through sports. So I'd have to test the waters. Obviously, activewear and clothes have become a massive industry. Though now, just like anything else, fast fashion and people left and right are creating their own brands and getting merch and selling product from the same, merchandiser that one of the top brands in the country has, and quality has gone down. So culturally, a lot of things have shifted as far as activewear and accessibility and quality, but it's a lifestyle now. It's a uniform. If you're wearing that brand, if you're wearing that type of activewear, if you're wearing that type of gear, if you're looking this certain way, then you're a runner, you're a Pilates girl, you're a gym girl, you're a yoga girl, whatever it may be. So we've moved away from just one clean girl aesthetic, if you want to call it that, to this performance girl era. But I mean, I'm still a clean girl. I've not lost a clean girl. It's just that now we're into this sporty chic gal thing. And I love it because this is what I've been my entire life. And we're all experiencing it. But really, what I wanted to talk about, aside from, the surface level, the superficial stuff, is how, think about when our parents were growing up. Think about I'm 36. So I even think about when I was growing up. Fitness and the culture was about being stick thin. You were getting measured with measuring tape and being pinched, and the lowest body fat percentage you could have, your smaller frame. People were literally squeezing themselves into mechanisms to try to make themselves smaller. You're not eating. Everything was smaller. Nothing was appropriate above a size 4. And a size 4 was considered not plus size, but okay, like if you're a size 4, that's it. like the 0, 1, 2, well, there's not a 1, 0, 2 was it. You were 4, you were teetering, you know what I mean? And it was everywhere. It wasn't just in one location. It wasn't just in my ring light died again. I need to buy a new one. It wasn't just in America, it was everywhere. And you noticed it in clothing. You noticed how clothing was being sized. You noticed how clothing was being made. Certain types of clothing were not available for women of a normal build and a normal size. When it came to fitness and exercise, it was a lot of aerobics gear. It was a lot of tight fitting, bandage, onesies and leotards. You didn't see anything that was body inclusive at all. That is, just think about how it's evolved over the last 20 years. We have now turned into a culture where it's okay to be toned and to have muscles and to have strong legs or have definition. I mean, I am obsessed with my muscle definition. I will look at myself in the mirror, and when I see my biceps, when I see my abs and stuff, I mean, that right there shows the work that you put in. You know what I mean? Now we're sharing and showing off, our marathon medals or high rocks or whatever competition, ultra and things like that. We're showing off our accolades, and we're sharing on social media about paces and PR and performance, all these different apps on how you can measure your performance and share it with other people. And then you can connect with other people through it. And it's just like performance is such an aesthetic. And I love that. And I think it is so cool. And obviously from that, we've evolved into wellness events and massive fitness events, whether they're local or, throughout a state or nationwide. But it's become such an amazing phenomenon. Biohacking. We we have now wellness studios where you go and you can get 10 different types of biohacking therapy that helps with body recovery. You are able to not only shop and get supplements, you can get in home recovery and therapy tools and technology and mechanisms to help with your performance. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And just to think that 20 years ago, it was a leotard and a size 2 and drinking your water, walking and eating an ice cube, having your salad, and any type of extracurricular activity would be very, very minimal unless you were an athlete. I am very, very lucky and I'm very blessed to say that I grew up playing soccer. I did competitive cheerleading. So I was never in a category, thank God, that I felt like I had to be like that. However, we still were perceived if you were a certain size or, we didn't know properly how women should fuel, how women should hydrate, how we should recover, obviously. And so there were those stimulations still, stimulations still. But at the same time, I'm thankful that I wasn't in a sport where they were, checking your weight 24/7, pinching you at the waist, making sure that, you weren't above 110 pounds. And because I have been around it for so long, and because I've been an endurance athlete for over 20 years, and I've lived in this performance training, my entire life, and I've seen how it empowers me and the ambition and how I can just there's no cap on how good you can become and how you can better yourself. And so there's the training for a purpose and building that confidence. And I see that now and how it's changed culturally. And I think that's really, really good positive progress for women, especially here I am talking with my hands, because of the fact that it's hot now. I mean, think about it, like even with guys and things like that in dating, like seeing a girl that wants to go and run a half marathon and PR and have a body where is toned and lean and has muscle, like that is a 10 out of 10. That is a winner right there. You know what I mean? That's changed. We're not in the era where just a stick board anymore and that's hot. So I think as we continue to progress, we're going to see more and more of this performance girl. We're not going to call it an era and we're not going to call it an epidemic, but we're going to see this performance girl That's it. Performance women, be the woman, be the standard. And that's what it should be. Truly, it should be the standard that you are allowed to look however you want and be as healthy and as strong and as sporty and a go-getter as you want in any sport. And that is the performance girl right there. That's the standard. Of course, with every positive, I don't like to bring a negative in, but I do like to bring in an area of work that needs to be done or something to mentally consider, because especially for myself, I am very competitive. I'm very, very hard on myself. I will run myself to the ground in order to be the best I can be at anything, and especially when it comes with running, and especially comes with sports and performing and competing, which I just spit on my microphone, which is why a lot of the times I don't like competing, because I put so much pressure on myself that I end up not having fun. And that's the whole point about it. Because again, I'm not training for the Olympics, but we just always need to make sure, as we are building this performance standard, that we are careful to not swap one pressure for the other. So there's nothing wrong with waking up at 5 a.m. There's nothing wrong with running marathons or being high performing. I mean, we talked about that last week, being high performing women. There's nothing wrong with tracking your metrics and wanting to be the best version of yourself. Because I think today, especially, which is very interesting, is we're competing against ourselves, where I find that that wasn't always the case back in the day. You were performing and competing against others because we didn't have technology. We don't have the apps, and we don't have the fitness trackers to allow yourself to compete against yourself that we do today. So you need to just make sure that while you're building yourself up to be the best performer that you want to be and you can possibly be, that you're not replacing restriction and being relentless with productivity, because I am guilty of it to the ends of the earth. I mean, you will hear me. I mean, I'll talk to, for example, it's actually my best friend growing up, Cammie, her sister, Cressy, her older sister, because she loves to run. I will literally be either DMing her. I've known them both my entire life, obviously. She's like my sister. I will be like DMing Cressy or texting Cressy about a run or a race, and we'll just be going back and forth on all this stuff of how hard we're being on ourselves. And it's so crazy. And then you sit back and you think about it, and this wasn't for money. Were you getting paid to do that? Like, did you get paid to run that race? I mean, aside from my sponsorships and stuff, but like, was there prize money? You know what I mean? Did you get, this high level title? Is there a statue being made of you? So why do you care so much? And I think that also comes with control, past trauma, just mental health and everything in between as well. But just making sure that what you're doing is for yourself and you like it. If you like waking up at 5 a.m. and busting out 6 to 10 miles, FUCK, yeah, go for it. If you like to be high performing, if you like to run millions of races a year, track your metrics, go for it. Don't stop, but just make sure that you like it and that you're not making it become a chore, because once you start making it a chore, all of that effort and everything that you've put into it just slowly starts to go out the window, and it's not fun anymore. And it should be fun. Always, always, always be fun. For me personally, I think it's fun being able to share your progress and share your metrics and share your race recaps. I love being able to share my splits and how I train. I think that's really, really, I don't know, it's fun. And then also it gives other people a perspective of what you do and what you've accomplished and what you're working on. And I like to see how other people share, their training and how they share their identity as a endurance performance gal or whatever it may be. And I don't think, for me personally, that I'm against any of that. I don't think that it's wrong to go on to your social media and share anything about what you are passionate about and what is your lifestyle, because that's your identity and who you are. I mean, it could be worse. I don't want to see you posting every day you're 3 a.m. getting home from partying and being blackout all the time. You know what I mean? there's things that we can all relate to, and then bounce ideas back and forth off of each other. I can't tell you how many times I've helped out friends when they've posted their run, and I'll notice something and I'll be like, hey, like if you tweak this or if you do that, you'll notice your pace will do this or XYZ. Hence why I've started, my mentorship and consulting for running and endurance because of that reason, for those little tweaks, and to really focus on what it is that you are wanting to achieve, whether it's training for races, whether it's maintenance, whether it's just getting started, whether it's A to Z. If you want to share about it, share about it. And I guarantee you the ones that like it will watch it, and the ones that don't, just like anything else. And just don't share where you're always running. Don't share your running routes all the time, because that's sketchy, especially for women. But share your shared goals and ask questions and have fun with it. Shoot. I love it. I love it. To wrap this up, I was really thinking how much we've evolved as women when it comes to prioritizing ourselves. But when we have something that we are very passionate about, and it happens to be a sport of some sort or a fitness activity of some sort that we can turn into a lifestyle, it is crazy how we have changed our boundaries, how we perceive relationships and friendships, how we feel capable. Like I always say, strong, capable, healthy, worthy, the discipline, but also showing more of that feminine energy because you're feeling confident in yourself. You're feeling like you're achieving something that is bigger and better. And it's not just a hobby, it's a lifestyle. You're meeting friends from this, you're meeting people from this, you're going on experiences, whether you're traveling to do stuff or you're meeting people in your community and building community. It's just this level of transforming your life into something much bigger than what it actually is, which is running. And I love that. I think it is the coolest thing to see, and how women have just become so powerful, so strong, so confident, which then it trickles down into, like I said, their relationships, their friendships, their careers, their motivation, how they are as moms, how they are as daughters, whatever it may be. And I don't ever want that to end. I want us to just continue to get better, to become better badasses, because I don't know. Yeah. Like, let's keep this going. Let's keep the performance gal standard at the top, no matter what. No matter what. To wrap up the episode, I wanted to kind of reverse back or touch back on fueling. But because we are in peak race season, I felt like I would just give a few tips and tricks for fueling with race week and what actually matters and what you can, just throw out the window and what really doesn't matter. First and foremost, it is not as complicated as you think it is. And it is not as scheduled as you think it is. As an endurance athlete myself, I like to schedule and feel scheduled when it comes to my eating, just because I'm type A, I'm OCD, I'm a planner. But it is not as rigid as it is put out to be, truly. All in all, it's about glycogen optimization, which we talked about glycogen with our carbs, and also we'll talk about glucose with sugar. It's about stress management, huge, and gut stability. But then we want to dabble in with some recovery. Your goal for race week is glycogen. Glycogen is stored carbohydrate in your muscles and liver. You want to focus on carbs. It's a dominant fuel source for moderate to high intensity endurance efforts, and is basically that medium fuel source between fats and protein. And you don't want to ever have your fuel source get as low as into the proteins, because once you've hit that, it's going to be a lot harder for you to achieve your output, and you're not going to be able to get back up your glycogen, your stored carbohydrates during that session, if that makes sense. So when you have glycogen stores that are high, You can sustain pace. You're able to perceive efforts lower, meaning you're not having to put a ton of output in because your energy systems are balanced. You have that stored energy, and your fatigue is delayed because, again, you're able to still continue to process that stored energy of the carbs. So that is the sweet spot right there. And like I was saying, if your glycogen stores are low, your pace is going to drop, effort's going to suck. You're going to feel like you're heavy. I actually experienced it a little bit today. Your performance will decline early and it's all downhill from there. And you will not make it back. I promise you, unless literally you're living off of like trauma and hopes and dreams. But once you cross that finish line, it's going to be rough for you. And you are going to take days upon days upon days to get back to where you should be over nothing. So just like anything, when you are more sedentary, or if you're going through a taper week, you're more sedentary, but you're still eating the same amount as you would during your training, then what's happening is your body is able to then what? Store more glycogen, store more energy, and build up that energy while you're tapering. So that reduction in your mileage lowers glycogen depletion, but you're keeping your carbohydrate intake consistent or slightly increases as it gets closer to race day. It's so easy to think about. Would look at fueling as something where 48 to 72 hours before your race, you want to have steady carbohydrate intake. So when you're having steady carbohydrate intake 48 to 72 hours before your race, obviously your energy efficiency, your energy output is lowering, but you're keeping that steady, adequate carbohydrate in, and you're including in your proteins and your fats, obviously your vegetables for antioxidants, etc. But think 48 to 72 hours before your race, you want to keep in that adequate carb intake and reduce your performance. Now, this is where people will tend to mess up. So if you are having steady carbohydrate intake or adequate carbohydrate intake 48 to 72 hours before a race, 48 to 72 hours is what? 3 to 2 days before a race, which is usually on Sunday. So most endurance athletes are going to continue to train somewhat. They'll probably have a rest day. They'll probably do a taper run or a shakeout run and maybe some sort of strength mobility balance. So you have to factor in that you will be burning energy and how you're going to continue to stay even, but also spike up a little bit with that carbohydrate because of the fact that you are burning energy still when you are just sedentary. So I would say to yourself, consistent intake throughout the day. That way, whenever you are doing the exercise, the activity that you're doing, you're still maintaining that carbohydrate intake. So your body is able to then rebuild that energy. It's constantly rebuilding the energy and storing it. So remember last week, we kind of talked about ATP, phosphagen, glycolytic, and oxidative. Yes. And when we were talking about that, we were talking about how each stage is how you would burn energy, but how many minutes in between where you would have that storage of carbohydrates and fats for men and women. So when you are doing any type of activity, and it's usually endurance, that's 90 minutes or longer, I cannot tell you how much your carbohydrate intake is the most important thing in your entire life. Because 90 minutes or longer, naturally, if you are not intaking enough, you will go into protein that you'll be in a defect. You've already gone through your carbs, your fats, and you're burning in protein, you're not coming back. 36 to 48 hours pre-race, the higher intake of carbs, which is what I basically talked about with the 48 to 72. It's the simple math is as it gets closer, you're intaking more, but you're being steady with it. 72 to 48 hours, you're being steady. 36 to 48 hours, you're just increasing more of the carbs, but you're still being steady. And that intake will support your optimal glycogen saturation. So don't think carbs the night before only, because your body's just going to burn that off because it hasn't had any other glycogen storage that you've been giving it. So whatever you just gave it is going to just burn it off right there or hold on to it, but that will literally be gone within the first 3 miles or not even of you running. So that's where a lot of amateur athletes make a mistake, is trying to cram, just like if you're studying for an exam, into one dinner. And that kind of glycogen loading is not going to help. It needs to be multi-day strategy. Period. That's it. Another thing that I always stress about is when I'm talking to people is, let's not experiment going into race week on different types of foods or what you want to eat and how it's going to help your performance output when it comes to, fiber, when it comes to fat, any kind of like gut stability stuff. Let's leave that to post race week when you have time to see how the intake helps, how your gastric, your foods, your in your gut actually with your GI, how it intake. Because the last thing you want is to try some funky shit out and it not work and you just be either depleted because you have gas, you're bloated, or you have some GI problems going on. Obviously, if you don't go number 2, then you could end up getting cramps. It's just not worth it. And high fiber foods, especially, you want to be careful with, because that is where you could get into more of the cramping, and we don't want that. We're not trying to make kimchi before your race. Aside from carbohydrates, aside from appropriate fueling where you're doing something steady throughout the week and increasing intake as race day gets closer, your muscle glycogen also binds with water. So hydration is key, obviously, as we always talk about, but glycogen storage increases and so does intracellular water. So meaning you want to make sure that you have your sodium intake. Obviously, we've gotten into the potassium and the magnesium and things like that, but your sodium intake should not be drastically restricted, which means you want your fluid balance and your plasma volume to support with your sodium. I strongly suggest that whatever hydration mechanisms you've been using electrolyte wise and that works for you is what you should be using. Obviously, sodium is the main player in the game, and we have our potassium, we have our magnesium. We've gone into some of our, minerals and such, but making sure that you are overly hydrated. It might feel like you're a little bit swollen, obviously, from the sodium intake. It's not fat. You're not getting fat. It's just water retention, which you want. But you want to make sure that you are equally hydrating, because muscle glycogen, so your carbs, binds with water. So if you are putting those two together, that glycogen storage is going to increase, and so will your intracellular water increase. If you can have those two down and that focus down, you will have the best output you'll ever have. I promise you. Carbs and sodium, water, hydration. I will say having protein and fats is very important as well, just to stay balanced, but your main source will be carbohydrates. And like I said, just trust the process. Race week in general, as it gets closer, you start to get stressed out, you start to get excited, you start to get anxious, your sleep's going to be a little wacky because you have to go to bed a lot earlier and you have to wake up a lot earlier, and then it's the in between before the race starts and everything. You know what I mean? It's a process, but just know that you do feel heavier the day of the race, and leading up to the race. You do feel heavier because obviously you've tapered. You're not doing your normal, rigid training routine and how you normally would fuel. You have been intaking a lot more carbs than you normally would. You're fueling a lot more than you normally would. So yeah, you're going to have that excess buildup of fluid and energy. But think of it that way. You have not gained weight. Trust me, by the end of that race, it will all be gone. It will be depleted. It will be gone. You will be back to normal. And that is what you want. So almost look at it like, if you're feeling a little swollen, if you're feeling a little bloated in the sense of water retention, you can push your nail into your skin and it kind of leaves a little mark. That's good. That means it's working and you're on your way to a victory. And final Little tip, morning of fueling. Again, not a time to experiment, not a time to test out new running gels or new carb salts or whatever the hell. Not a time to talk about caffeine and shit like that, like the dosing or whatever. Do what you've always done and do it well. I would strongly suggest having some sort of high carb, go figure, before your race, at least an hour, a half hour marker, getting that in, because right away out of the gate, that's going to improve your start line, improve your race pacing right away. So if that means you wake up and you pound back, some overnight oats, toast with peanut butter, whatever it may be very, very careful with dairy. Be very, very careful with anything raw, because again, that can, create gas. But packing in something right away, because typically when you wake up, you need to get that body going. Obviously, you're going to have your bowels and things like that, but then having at least a gel and one type of carb snackaroo right before you race, that 30 minutes, we will see you flying. You will be flying, I promise you, because that's the start. That's like, think of it like it's like the pregame, so you have that, it's like you're doubling up on the fuel. So you're not starting to already take from the bank that you've been working up throughout the whole week. It's just like your little first dabble before you start going into your reserve. Think of it like that. So like, your savings, right? Like this is like, you're not going into your savings yet. You're going into your available cash flow. All right, well, I have rambled on enough, to say the least. I mean, I'm like frothy in the mouth. I think that we've talked about some really great things. I really hope that this has been an educational and informative episode, because it is important. And I want all y'all to just be crushing your races, your PR, your fueling, your confidence, everything. We're some badass women. And I'm so proud of y'all, truly. If you have questions or if you want to do a little mentoring, let me know. You know where to find me. Products I'm digging this week. These new running glasses. I got like 4 new running glasses over the last couple weeks, and these to me are just badass. I'm sorry. They're gold. I love it. I like that they block on the side so no sun can get in. And I mean, they just scream, get out of my way. So I need to clean them though, because I ran in them this morning. Definitely digging that. Salt Lab, which I'm excited they're sending me more. Salt Lab magnesium muscle repair cream and magnesium oil. I love this stuff, especially for sore muscles. So the cream, muscle repair cream, is for Z-Bolti, and then the spray I put on my feet and I'll put socks on. So good. And then it is a smaller brand that is definitely super cool. It's called Date Fix, and basically it is dates blended with orange blossom water. It would be used as obviously a gel or a carb for running. I like to have it before a run, and they have a couple different flavors: turmeric, cinnamon, and ginger. I really love it. I'm a big fan of dates. I like the taste of it. I like the consistency, and it's just something really cool and different, and yeah, like it. I was sent Groons. I know this has become like a big phenomenon on TikTok and Instagram. I'm usually not a fan of highly promoted, influenced products like that, but I do like them. They're superfood green gummies. I also have the neurotrops, which are mushrooms. And yeah, superfoods. Can't get enough about it. And then last but certainly not least is this Abaji. I don't know how to say that. It is a medical lip therapy, but soothe and protect lip treatment with a broad spectrum of SPF 30. Got it from my girl Jenny, who does my face at Elite Styles Med Spa. I love it. It makes my lips feel so good. This is the daytime one. I guess there's a nighttime one that I'm going to get from her next week when I go to see her, that like eats away some bad stuff that's on your lips at night. I don't know. It's pretty cool. So yeah, these are the products that I'm digging this week. And now we have finally finished episode 30. Thanks for sticking around. Thanks for being with me throughout this entire process. I love you all. And that's that.